This brings us right to the next question about core strength. We hear a lot about strengthening the child's core. I want to invite you to think about it differently. How can we help the child, instead of a strong core, have a dynamic core? The child uses their core to roll around. At some point, they use their core to come to sitting. They use their core to come on all fours. And eventually, they use their core to come to stand and walk. But how much strength does a neurotypical child need to do that? Not much at all. They just use as much strength as they need to displace themselves from point A to B to execute their intention. What do I mean by that? If I'm a child sitting and I want to reach for a toy, I need to know how to keep myself up with my core and how I can shift in my pelvis so I can reach to the toy. The muscles are doing the work to move the skeletal apparatus from A to B, from B to C, and that's what we call transitioning. And the child transitions to execute their intention to what they want in life in that very moment. There's not much strength involved at all. Now, the child with special needs, the child that has CP and often has a lot of spasticity, they don't have a dynamic core like a typical child has. The core is too rigid. The core is spastic. The abdominal muscles often are overly spastic, contracted, too strong. I use the word stabilized core. Well, if you want to move, you have to have a dynamic core, not a stabilized core. So moving away from strength, think more about organization. How does a child learn to organize their body parts in order to transition so they can go from A to B or locomote themselves forward? Has nothing to do with strength, just regular muscle use.
Short, Jeez. You can even see that later. Okay, can you lift one arm? Can you lift one arm? Okay. Can you lift an arm? See, can you lift an arm in this position? Up. Like that. Can you lift one? There we go. Okay, that's wonderful. We'll put this down and then lift the other one. Look at you. That's right. You can do it. That's amazing.
The arms and the legs need to be coordinated, integrated, connected into our core, meaning head, spine, pelvis. And that coordination, that connection is learned through movement. The learning happens by feeling it. So once again, that child that has a hard time to coordinate their limbs needs a teacher, needs a practitioner, needs a mentor who helps that child feel the connection and the usage of limbs through their core, through their spine. And the child has to feel it. They can't be told to imitate the teacher or to repeat what somebody says. You have to feel it. Otherwise, you cannot put it into action. Think of the use of the arms for a moment. You use them for reaching, or you use them for pulling or pushing. And all of these movements of the upper limbs have to be relating to your spine movement all the way into the pelvis. Yeah. So if I reach, I have to move my core. I have to use my spine into the pelvis. My hip joints. I have to feel my hip joints when I want to do something with my arm. And any other function that we do with the arm goes through the connection of your spine. And the same is true for the leg. And the beauty of our work is that we have many, many different ways to help the child feel and learn about all these connections, that everything is connected to everything else, which helps the child come to more complexity and eventually to come to stand and walk. So back to the brain plasticity, we have to help the child to learn how they can differentiate throughout their bones and muscles to be able to learn to transition, to deal with gravity. They often don't know how to do it. And then often conventional therapy wants to strengthen their core, or they already don't know how to use their contracted, too strong core. Why do you want to, on top of that, strengthen their core? So that's why I teach my students in my seminars, instead of a strong core, what it feels like to have a dynamic core. So they can translate that feeling into their hands and convey it to the child with special needs.